Welcome to my Longsword guide. As many of you requested, I've been trying to make this for quite some time because I have way too much to say about this class. Remember to like and subscribe, and let's cut to the chase. I've been playing the Longsword for over 900 hours and almost the Longsword exclusively. Through this long period of time, I've come to appreciate its strengths and weaknesses. The Longsword is hardly the strongest weapon in terms of damage and crowd control, but it is one of the strongest weapons if you consider its supportive nature and survivability. This does not mean it doesn't have the necessary skills to become more combat oriented, as the developers designed the Longsword to cover all the roles with decent competency. Because of this, the weapon has much more to talk about compared to other, more role-focused weapons. Let me explain this in more detail, but before that, in this guide I've split the video into 3 parts. The first part will be a more general look into the weapon, providing everything a beginner might need. The second part will be the runes, skills, and technical stuff you want to know about everything Longsword. And the last part will be a more in-depth discussion on the Longsword playstyle and my personal thoughts on it. For beginners, the first thing that you'll need to know about the Longsword is that your abilities scale with your unit capabilities. If your units are low tier and low level, the healing and speed boost your abilities provide can only help you so much. This means the Longsword isn't the best starting weapon if you want to play how I do, but this does not mean you can't. You'll just need to play a bit differently. Just use a more aggressive build so you can rely on your hero's damage more, then slowly transition to a support build as you get better units like the Condottieri Guards from Season 4 and the Paladins from Season 6. Use my second game in my back-to-back Silver Games video to see what I mean. Essentially, you want to use more with Valor to deal damage yourself without relying completely on your units. And make sure you keep an eye on the battlefield interactions so you can learn quickly what units are meta and how each map is structured, so you grow your wealth of knowledge about the game to utilize later. If you really just started out, there's a code in the description that you can use to support the channel and gain some early rewards. And make sure you join the Discord if you have any questions about the game. We have quite a few people that will provide some help. Now let's get into the in-game armor, weapon, attribute, rune, and skill selection. Armor-wise, you should aim for leadership, as much of it as possible, whether it is to make it yourself or buy it in the market. Anything else, like armor rarity, comes second, and what defenses are on them comes last. If you're new or lack good armor, the market always has purple rarity armor pieces without leadership, selling at dirt cheap so you can buy them before you aim for leadership. With leadership, you'll have a better unit roster, and being a longsword who relies more on the units to deal damage, the higher the leadership directly results in better performance. I recommend aiming for 750 leadership, so that's an average of 13 extra leadership per piece. For the weapon, I have a really good legendary one that covers everything that I'll need. If you're crafting yours, any stat works due to the longsword using all the damage types equally, but it will also depend on which skills you pick. But generally, aim for either a damage or a distribution similar to one attribute like strength, so you could use the other attribute like agility to cover the other half. I have a complete video on attributes if you want to know the full details, but I'll go over what I use here. Before Season 8, there are multiple different ways to play the Longsword. You could play around with any combination of offensive attributes due to the Longsword needing all. For defenses, either incorporating some toughness with other offensive attributes, or going full armor would be my go-to. But since the introduction of armor runes, full armor builds have come out on top, being the most effective. Being a full tank with full armor, I can get up to 1100 armor, which is about 10% tankier compared to my last season's 1000 armor, and even more compared to a full toughness build. I highly recommend this build as it takes tanking to a new level, being highly resistant to average penetrations of units and heroes, with the exception of some armor reducing skills and muskets that you need to be more aware of. Also, if you're a territory war player, going full toughness will be the better option, unless you reach 12,000 armor and above. This is because you need above 30,000 health to tank a purple ballista shot. With that said, I have a new spreadsheet in the description you can use to find the optimal attribute distribution that fits you personally. Just follow the steps and you should be optimally built for any circumstance. If you really wanted to make a build with offensive capabilities, go to my spreadsheet and use about 70 to 50% on offensive attributes, depending on how long you can remain alive in battle, and the rest in toughness, just like previous seasons. This used to be my preferred build before the armor runes. Talking about the runes, Season 8 is not a good season rune-wise for longswords. The 3 unique runes are lackluster compared to other similar runes, especially the short sword. The Goat, Fresh Power, gives 100 damage to a hero when you're above 70% health. Even without the limitations, it lags behind the short sword, who gets 12% damage and 8% more defense depending on their health. The Goat Power in Faith also loses to Short Sword Slayer boon, which increases not only defense, but also damage at a higher level. Generally speaking, other runes on other weapons mostly outshine the Longsword in capabilities. That being said, we still need to choose from what we have. The 100 damage rune is a waste as it only increases your hero's damage and not your units. The best you can do is with the damage reduction rune and health regen when lower than 50% health. With the 6% damage reduction, you can almost keep it up for more than 20 seconds, but because you can't see the buff in game, it's quite hard to gauge how useful it is. The heal under 25% on the other hand, in combination with Mercy of Heaven and full armor, becomes extremely good at keeping you alive. Providing up to 3% heal every second when you're on your last legs, I've outlasted situations impossible for most other classes. And it isn't a problem to stay alive for an entire game while tanking the most damage as a hero in your team. For everything else, I recommend increasing base stats, especially armor when you can. My runes are on screen, so you can copy them if you want. Anything related to bandages are not good, as you rarely if ever use them as a longsword player. Buffs after death are not good on a longsword because you'll likely die last and few times each game. The 10% damage reduction on point, or 3% damage reduction, might be decent, but the cost of 2 armor runes make it not worth the investment. Now then, let's talk about the skills the longsword has. This is the crux of the issue at hand, and I want you to be open-minded, to think about each skill's potential, and try them out yourself before committing to any set. I'll show you the ups and downs of all the skills because I've tried them each extensively. My goal here is to share my experiences and help you decide on what you want. First up are the ultimates. This choice will determine what other skills you'll get later on because the ultimates have completely different styles of play. Clash of Shields is almost unanimously used by all longsword users. In part, it's because every guide on the web backs it up, but it's also because the first level of it is indeed much better than Sally Forth. It's a perfect support ultimate with one of the most wanted aspects of the game, crowd control, built into its core. It even has heavy speed reduction to boot, making it a skill jam-packed with benefits. You might have seen it in action, or you might have heard others swear by it. I'm looking at you, Night Stalker. But undoubtedly, if you're just beginning to play Longsword, you should choose this instead of Sally Forth. Go look at Night Stalker's channel if you want examples of its usage, like stopping cavalry charges and breaking formations. That being said, I'll raise some problems the ultimate has. The first is its 50-second cooldown, the longest ultimate cooldown in the game. This makes finding the right timing to use it especially important. The ultimate has a small travel distance, so you need to get as close to the front lines as possible when casting. And you'll need to get used to the distance so you can come back to the front line, else risk getting trapped in the enemy formations. It also requires you to be a full tank if you don't want to die slamming your body into enemy formations. This ultimate knocks down and slows heroes and units, but without good coordination, these precious few seconds can get wasted. This is especially true due to your inability to effectively control your own units while using this ultimate, but this can get better with more experience. I personally find this lack of damage and long cooldown quite punishing, but most of all, the need to be reactionary to cues like cavalry charges, or the need to follow up on ally pushes to disrupt enemy formations to fully benefit from it does not suit my playstyle. Although both ultimates are support oriented, Clash of Shield is much more of a team player, being the preferred ultimate in territory wars for good reason. On the other hand, I use Sally Forth, and not a lot of people can say that. In fact, I know no one else other than myself that uses this skill to the extent that I do. There are a few reasons behind this. First of all, it has a very high entry barrier. You need to max out the ultimate before it shows its potential. Each upgrade dramatically increases its damage output due to the substantial damage increases and lowered cooldown. The largest roadblock might be the achievement required to get the last upgrade, which needs you to get multiple Make It Happen badges, requiring 15 assists in any one game. This is challenging because you need to aim for it in order to get it, and a lot of people just stop at this roadblock. But if you complete it, the last upgrade provides up to 20% more damage for the ultimate, making it the second most damaging ultimate behind the unused Dual Blade ultimate. These roadblocks make the ultimate inaccessible to most longsword users, but even if you were to push through these roadblocks, you still face the fact that it's a hard to hit ultimate that has a long windup and a small area of effect. So why even bother going through the hardship to get it, you might ask? Why do I use the ult instead of Clash of Shields? Well, that's because it makes the longsword hero into a support hero, not for the team, but for your own unit. This ult is a lot of things. When fully upgraded, it's the second highest DPS ultimate in the game due to its low cooldown of 37 seconds and raw damage. It also has one of the longest stun durations in the game, like the poleaxe and dual blade, although it can be disrupted. It uses all 3 damage types and every hit has a different effect, from stun, concussion to knockdown, This means after the second hit, your opponent might have a chance to counter concussion skill that can escape your last ult hit. The biggest mistake people have when using this ultimate is trying to get a kill. When you're in this mentality where you perceive every miss as a lost opportunity, you'll find the ultimate inadequate indeed. Instead, much like Clash of Shields, it is also a support ultimate with the aim of protecting your units from enemy heroes by disabling their advance, and killing them if they get too close to your units. Your long animations are there as deterrents against aggressors so enemy heroes do not come closer, and if they are unfortunate enough to get hit, they are trapped and are forced to take the damage and the stun, as well as your unit damage. Just imagine a mole player going into your units with his whirlwind attack. You wait until he stops and tries to retreat back to safety, but you use Sally Forth to stun his retreat while on the ground next to him waiting for his mistake. You stun him and deal up to half his health while your units take out the rest. There are generally 3 best case uses. One is to stun heroes who are using their skills on your units. In this case, you want to aim for when they finish the skill animation and stun him while in the middle of your units, resulting in an easy kill. Another best case scenario is using Sally Forth on an enemy hero who's trying to kill another ally hero. All you need to do is to stun him to change the battle to your team's favor. And lastly, in duels, you want to try blocking all the enemy skills so your ultimate is not interrupted, so you can deal and hit a massive burst of damage that will change the duel to your favor. I sometimes heavily rely on Sally Forth as my only source of damage in duels, and that says a lot about its damage potential. Or you can use the ultimate to stun and kill units like berserkers or enemy horse units after their charge. There is a reason why the game promotes the Longsword as a defense and offense capable class. Most undervalue half the kit and forget its original purpose. Sally Forth is that skill that makes the Longsword a well-rounded defense and offense-oriented hero. This ultimate is a game changer when done at the right time. Its stun and raw damage are lethal in the right circumstances, but only when your enemies are distracted and skill deprived, so patience is key when using the skill at the right time. Similar to the perfect counterattacks in other games, it's an acquired taste. That's enough of me rambling about Sally Forth. I know that I'm fighting a losing fight due to the difficulty of appreciating the ultimate, but anyway, let's get on with the other skills. First of all is Mercy of Heaven, the only obligatory skill for the Longsword. The skill that heals you for 10% outright and 20% continuously for you and 10% for your units and allies. This is the core ability to be a Longsword, and one needs to use it as much as possible in every match. A good trick with the skill is to combat roll after you begin the animation to cancel it. This trick will save you time otherwise spent on the long immobile animation, and can be used on Nightly Vows as well. This skill effectively makes you stay on the battlefield for much longer than the ordinary hero who needs to retreat and heal. The Longsword hero just stays a bit behind the front line and heals automatically with Mercy of Heaven, giving him the advantage of knowing what's happening as it occurs. As a result, there is no other class that has as much knowledge of the battlefield and is capable of taking every opportunity that comes your way. Knowing that the result of a battle is decided before the battle begins, the Longsword hero can decide more clearly than other heroes when to engage and when to back off from a losing fight. With Valor is the best unit killing skill the Longsword hero has, and it is obligatory for any users of Clash of Shields because it remedies a lack of offensive capabilities. It has a very long animation which can cancel at any time with a very short cooldown, considering its damage potential. With and without this skill changes completely how many units your hero will kill on average, so if that's what you want, go for it. But do note, this is a skill that gets you into the most trouble and will get you killed by its constant advancing and predictable animation, but for Silver Trials and newer players, this skill is a must. Martial Prowess is an interesting skill, especially for tanks who want to commit being a pure tank. While its block when attacking is a plus, it heals 3% per hit, capping at 6%, giving it a potential 12% heal per use. This provides even more sustain on top of Mercy of Heaven. This skill has a good synergy with Clash of Shields due to needing to stay on the front lines, so you can consider swapping out with Valor with this skill if you find yourself dying too much. Paladin used to be a great skill with a massive 75% speed debuff even if it was hard to hit, but it changed into an armor debuff of 15%, giving you a rough 12% damage buff for attacks and any of your unit attacks for 6 seconds. I want to say it can be useful, but I've tried it for a long time to find its potential. It turns out to be quite awkward to use, especially because the hitbox is smaller than the animation. I rarely found it to be better than being behind your units and focusing on using X and V for that higher rate of attack. but it can be very rewarding when used on very heavy armor units with over 1000 armor. Shield Bash is the only recovery skill other than Sally Forth. If you're a full tank, this skill will be less meaningful, but if you're not, it's a lifesaver. This skill is mandatory if you're using Sally Forth, as the second bash stuns heroes, making it the perfect time to use Sally Forth. Another thing to remember is that, unlike other classes, the longer you are on your feet, the more blocking stab damage you can deal, so any time spent on the floor is your loss of damage potential, even if it's just low levels of damage, but it is damage without any repercussions. Knight's Vow is another great support skill. Its potential in team play and territory wars can be game changing, but in my experience, it isn't limited to just playing within a team. In solo sieges, I use it to increase the speed of charge units like the Condos or Paladins, who have a charge cooldown almost exactly the same as the Knight's Vow. You might think that Knight's Vow only makes them faster. Well, yes it does. It makes them engage faster, resulting in more burst damage. It also makes them easier to control in the X and V due to their faster speeds. And a speed buff can further augment skills like the Kondo's Shield Bash, turning them from an already aggressive AI into brutal homing missiles without delay, greatly increasing their effectiveness in charging down enemies. This skill can be used with Imperial Pikes to make them faster, or Fort Pikes to make them into formations faster, and it speeds units returning to supply just a bit faster. Personally, I have become stuck with it since picking it up. It's not as good as other skills most of the time, but it is one of the skills that grow on you, creating a strange dependency like Mercy of Heavens. If only it was usable on horseback, I would fall in love with the skill even more and make it mandatory for cavalry players. There are also some other features that I need to talk about, one being the ability to stab while blocking. While it is great to use in most circumstances, you need to be aware of blunt damage and high damage cavalry charges. If you run out of blocking stamina, you'll go into a state of vulnerability, getting stunned in the middle of the battle and taking on almost double the damage of anything hitting you. This makes them all the greatest counter to the Longsword, not only being able to break your block, but to make you stunned in the process. So you need to be very careful about your blocking stamina. Like all other heroes, the horseback ability is great on a Longsword, and it stuns heroes who are hit by it. Use this as much as you can because it is the best engagement tool the Longsword has to open fights. With all the skills and other details talked about, how do you exactly play the Longsword? Let's talk about my understanding of the weapon first. I played with the Longsword alone in random sieges for the most time, so I've made habits on some not so popular skill choices. In fact, in the gameplay videos I've made so far, at least one individual would come out and criticize my usage of them, particularly Sally Forth. From my interviews with other Longsword players, nobody else plays skills like Sally Forth, and some don't even use Shield Bash, preferring Clash of Shields and With Valor instead. I'm not gonna claim that I know everything about the Longsword and Shield, but what I can do for you in this video is to help you consider the two main playstyles the Longsword has. Because believe me when I say I've played with every skill extensively, switching skills every season to try come up with new ways to play. The mainstream way is Clash of Shields, Mercy of Heaven, With Valor, and another skill of choice, likely either Shield Bash, Knightly Vows, or Martial Prowess. This playstyle sees players going full tank most of the time, and they generally use their skills to further the goals of the entire team. Go check out Night Stalker's channel for examples, as he almost exclusively plays this type of style. This is also the style I have the least experience with, because I don't play too close to the front lines, which this type of playstyle excels in. If you play Territory Wars, this is the playstyle you're looking for, and the majority of Longsword players play somewhat similar to this. And as you know, I play quite differently from the mainstream, and it centers around using Sally Forth, which aims to maximize one's unit to their greatest potential. Let's call it the Apogee way, and the playstyle fits into playing random siege and ranked games. The setup I use is Sally Forth, Mercy of Heaven, Shield Bash, and either Knightly Vows or With Valor. I believe the main role of the Longsword and Shield is taking the concept of controlling one's unit to the extreme. This works because each unit formation command needs your hero to be behind your units. So if you want to perfect their usage by micromanaging them, you'll need to stay behind your units to control them at all times. Out of all the classes, the Longsword is the only class that can effectively increase their unit potential with their skills, and that is why I have a hard time switching to a new class. With the ability to keep their unit health high so that they do not need to return to supply often, and speeding them up when they need a boost to their charge to move across the map faster or to make them easier to control in combat, the Longsword hero does not need to be on the front lines to make the same amount of pressure any other hero can make. All he has to do is let their unit take their place. This is why, for this build, you can run whatever attribute you want as long as you can stay alive to control your units. This season, it just so happens that full armor is the best, so I chose to play it. Now you might be wondering, why Sally Forth then? Why can't using Clash of Shields achieve the same results? It could, but just differently. You see, Clash of Shield necessitates that your hero goes into the fray and pushes over the enemy with your hero. This makes a big problem because at that time, you are losing control over your own units, unable to micromanage them effectively. This also changes the mentality of your play, making your hero an equal to your units in an engagement. Sally Forth, on the other hand, makes your enemy think twice about going close to your units, because if they do, and you can stun them, they are very dead. The desired result is twofold, either deterrence or an outright counter, so your units can go for the kill. Against possible enemy heroes who want to kill your units, especially mauls who think they could come in and kill everything, Sally Forth can bring a stop to their attack either by forcing a retreat upon seeing your long animation, or becoming food for your units while they lie helpless on the floor. This ultimate makes it clear that they shall not pass, because the damage, long stun, and consequences are nothing to be laughed at. In this clip here, an ally locks down 2 heroes. I follow in with Sally Forth and take 2 kills which otherwise might have been our deaths. And in this clip, Glaive tries to engage my grey hair garrisons, but before he could begin his attacks, I knock him down with Sally Forth, and with my unit, kill him in the ground in seconds. I hear people say that Sally Forth shouldn't be used because a longsword hero doesn't do any damage. Well, that's true if you play full tank, which almost all longswords play, so that is the incorrect perception. If you play to protect your units and have them bodyguard you in return, you can confidently add attributes that boost your damage. If you do so, you will surprise those who are unaware of the longsword's true damage potential when using Sally Forth. In fact, a full damage build will easily kill light and medium armor with just the ultimate alone due to the ultimate's absurd damage multipliers, and an extra 10% weapon damage modifier, making it the greatest beneficiary of constant damage buffs that was disregarded by most longsword players. My way of play really relies on good units to back me up, so next I'll talk about what units go well with the longsword. Easily said, anything that has either high health or high armor and stands on 2 legs is what the longsword excels at. For ranged units, this means tertios and javelin units. For melee, this means almost every unit in the game, but preferably high tier units. And for cavalry, no. Only spears have any synergy with them, unfortunately. My favorite units say quite a lot about the longsword class. They are the paladins or expedition knights in Frontier, for the brachio pikemen, javelin sergeants, tertios, and shield maidens. All of them, including tertios, are very micro-intensive due to their abilities, some due to their X and V, but what they have in common is great potential for great plays. This is central for the longsword, as the better your units are, the better results you can get on the battlefield. If you just started playing the game and want to play the longsword, I recommend the javelin sergeants as your first heroic unit. They are okay in melee, but are great in sustained ranged combat, making them the best pick. This is because if you only have one heroic unit to choose from, they are the only unit that can outlast the entire game if played right. As for longsword must-have units, the tertio is one of the only golden era units all longsword players should have, because it not only has the armor and health to benefit from your heals, but it also lasts a very long time, while also being quite a micro-intensive unit that needs situation awareness to play well, which fits the longsword role perfectly. Paladins are another must-have. Not only are they my favorite unit, but they are basically more of you on the battlefield, making perfect synergy. Their heal becomes extremely strong with your healing, you can boost their charge with Knightly Vows, and using X and V makes them stronger, so they are also micro-intensive. There is no unit and hero combo that has as much synergy as the Paladin and Longsword. What you don't want to have is Berserkers. They are simple to use and need no micromanagement, so even if you can heal them and boost them, they don't care about you and your controls, especially while in rage. Other units that I tend to leave for other heroes to use are Shield Walls. These Shield Walls can't defend against crowd control and lack damage to defend themselves and you. If you use Clash of Shields, maybe you can try, but if you use Sally Forth, they don't benefit as much as other heroes who can support them with their own damage and their own crowd control. But that does not mean you shouldn't go out of your way to keep them healthy when you do have them nearby. So here are my final thoughts. Should you try this weapon out? I think everyone should get the weapon and use it in expeditions or any PvE content. This is because they are the only healers in the game and they allow you to lower your unit hit losses in expeditions and bandit raids. I've had multiple expeditions with 5 longswords and they are the easiest to cooperate with because they know exactly what they're doing. You can still use your main weapon, but if you're grinding for unit XP, go with longswords in combination with one or either stalwarts, berserkers, grey-haired garrisons, or shield maidens, and one cavalry unit like the armigers or monastics for some other maps. If you don't have the above, invest in the spear sergeants as they are the best alternative. Are the longswords meta, and how strong are they in the tier list? In territory wars, they are S tier, especially in tier 4 wars of attrition. In PvE, they are undoubtedly the best hero to be. In sieges, they are great with a group of friends and they do fairly well on their own. In field battles, they are outclassed by other more damage and mobile classes. In ranked, they can be really good with a coordinated team because you can buff them with shield maidens, which you can micromanage better than any other class. Looking at the class in the more broad terms, the longsword is a class focused on the control of units, with abilities that complement a more unit-first approach to the game. Being a real-time strategy fan, the longsword is the most homecoming class that the game has to offer. So if you want to get the most out of the unit combat this game provides, and in my opinion, why the game is so addictive in the first place, go ahead and try the longsword today. Well, that came out more like a commercial than what I wanted, but hey, I guess that's what I want. More people playing this gem of a game and to enjoy what this class has to offer. This was Alan, don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you in the next one.